Hello everyone. In this lecture I'm going to talk about the pharmacology of the autonomic nervous system. As everyone knows that we have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic one. The sympathetic, it's called the ergotropic system. Ergotropic means energy expenditure. In another way, let's say that we need to use our energy to do something, okay? And for example, I'm running, I'm fighting with someone, so that I need to use my muscles. I need to use more energy to adapt with the stress, okay? So that my heart rate will be increased, the respiration rate, etc. So that we need to do something. So that, as everyone knows, that we have the fly and fight concept about the sympathetic. In case of the parasympathetic one, it's called the trophotropic system, leading to growth. So we need to keep our energy to rest, digest, and do some some metabolism in the human body. Don't worry, I'm gonna cover everything later in this lecture. So as we can see here, first what you have to know that before we start, the parasympathetic, mostly the main neurotransmitter is the acetylcholine. The main neurotransmitter, the main neurotransmitter is the acetylcholine. And in case of the parasympathetic, I'm gonna explain everything later, but let's talk about some basic principles here. So the preganglionic, as you can see here, we have the ganglion, and the preganglionic fibers are long, okay? But and the postganglionic fibers are short. As you can see here, it is really long. But in case of the in the postganglionic one, which is after the ganglion, it is short. But in case of the sympathetic one, no, the preganglionic is short, and the postganglionic is long. Okay. One more thing, we have to know that I don't care that much about the neurotransmitter here, because I'm gonna explain everything. So the preganglionic one, as you can see, as I said before, it is in case of the parasympathetic, the neurotransmitter is the acetylcholine, okay? Or in different way, it doesn't matter, acetylcholine or acetylcholine. In the postganglionic, it's also acetylcholine, okay? But in case of the sympathetic, we know, look, mostly let's focus on something which is preganglionic acetylcholine and postganglionic norepinephrine, okay? We have here, as you can see, acetylcholine, dopamine, but don't worry, because we have some exceptions. I'm gonna cover everything later. But now you have to understand the parasympathetic: preganglionic long, postganglionic short, sympathetic preganglionic short, and postganglionic long. Okay, and the neurotransmitters: parasympathetic acetylcholine, preganglionic and postganglionic acetylcholine 2, and the sympathetic acetylcholine before, and norepinephrine after. In case of the sweaty glands, guys, the sweaty glands, it is we need, for example, you are running, right, and so that you need to eliminate, let's say, remove as much as it's possible to let's say, thermoregulation mechanism in your body, so that your body temperature will be increased if, let's say, if the sweaty glands will not be work well, okay? So that you need to in this case you need the sympathetic nervous system. But here, because it is sympathetic cholinergic, the parasympathetic, look, acetylcholine, it's related to the cholinergic, and norepinephrine, it's related to noradrenergic, or let's say adrenergic. So as you can see here, it is sympathetic cholinergic, so that the acetylcholine will be in the postganglionic nerve fibers. Did you get this point? Okay. But in case of the others, okay, let's say, for example, here, as you can see here, as I said before, the acetylcholine in the sympathetic preganglionic and postganglionic norepinephrine, and we have the alpha and beta. I'm gonna talk about it later. Cardiac, smooth muscles, glands, etc. But in this case, it is not that much difficult. But the renal vascular smooth muscle, will be dilated, or let's say the vasoconstriction process or vasodilation by dopamine and norepinephrine. Dopamine induces vasodilation of the renal vascular smooth muscle, okay, or let's say the renal vessels. But in case of the norepinephrine, it will induce vasoconstriction by the alpha. Okay, that's hallmark here about it, and don't worry, slowly I'm gonna talk about the other parts. Okay, so one more thing that I have to talk about it. So let's go to the whiteboard. Okay, so as everyone knows, the sympathetic is the thoracolumbar part, and the parasympathetic is the craniosacral part. The sacral part, it is not related to the parasympathetic nervous system. How? Okay, we have 4 points about this part. First, the preganglionic sacral nerve fibers are derived from embryonic sympathetic precursor cells. Okay, it's not derived from parasympathetic cells. The second part is the parasympathetic, the preganglionic parasympathetic nerve fibers express the homogene FOX2B and the transcription factors TBX 22 and 3, which are not expressed by the sacral and the sympathetic pathway. Okay, the third point, the sacral and the sympathetic and the sacral, let's say here the sacral, express the transcription factors FOXP1, okay, FOXP1, which are not expressed by the parasympathetic, The fourth point, the sacral and the sympathetic fibers exit from the ventral root, okay, but in case of the parasympathetic, the parasympathetic fibers exit from the dorsolateral root. Okay guys, so the adrenergic transmission, we can get first the choline into the presynapse by the cholinotransporter, okay, and the acetyl-CoA from the mitochondria, and you know, it is some, let's say, the to get the acetylcholine here, you know, some biochemical reactions to get the acetylcholine. Then by vesicular acetylcholine transporter, it will get into the vesicle. You know, inside the vesicle, the acetylcholines, the quaternary ammonium, positively charged quaternary ammonium, will bound negatively proteoglycans. Okay, now the next point is we have something is called vesicle associated membrane protein. It's on the vesicle, by the way, and we have synaptosomal associated membrane protein. Okay, both of them will fuse with each other to get, or to give us the fusion protein. Okay, because you know the vesicle will be fused into this the synapse to get outside, or to go to the synaptic cleft, so that the vamp and snap will be fused with each other to get the acetylcholine outside the vesicle. And we have some, let's say, subtypes. For example, in case of the vamp, we have synaptoprevin. Okay, but in case of the snap, we have SNAP 25, and let me write here, sorry, vamp, we have synaptoprevin, and in case of the snap, okay, sorry, this one is called snare, by the way. You can find it another definition for it, but snare. Okay, but in case of the snap, we have snap 25 and syntaxin. Okay, subtypes, but the main subtypes for SNAP and the main subtype for VAMP. The main subtype for VAMP is synaptoprevin, and for SNAP we have SNAP25 and Syntaxin. Then the acetylcholine now is out in the synaptic cleft, and you know, the cholinereceptors to do the parasympathetic activities. We have some inhibitors, for example hemicoloniums. Hemicoloniums inhibit the choline transporter, okay? For example, the visamicol inhibits the vesicular acetylcholine transporter. The botulinum toxin inhibits the fusion protein. So that by removing two amino acids from the fusion protein, okay? That's let's say everything you need to know about that the adrenergic transmission. So now we have the cholinergic transmission. Okay, sorry, the adrenergic transmission. The adrenergic transmission starts with tyrosine, okay? So the tyrosine will get inside the presynapse by tyrosine hydroxylase to dopamine. So guys, let me just go to explain this with more detail. So as you can clearly see here, the tyrosine by tyrosine hydroxylase to dopa. You can see as just because tyrosine hydroxylase, sorry, okay, the tyrosine hydroxylase, we add the OH here by the dopa decarboxylase, sorry, by dopa, then by dopa decarboxylase we remove the COOH, so you can find it here. Dopamine by dopamine beta hydroxylase, sorry, by dopamine beta hydroxylase. Then to norepinephrine. Norepinephrine by phenylethylamine and methyltransferase will be converted to epinephrine. We have another pathway here by alamino decarboxylase to tyramine, by dopamine beta hydroxylase to octapamine, and by hydroxylase to norepinephrine. Okay, because in this figure we can't find the reactions of tyrosine to norepinephrine. Then the dopamine will get inside the vesicle by vesicle membrane associated transporter, okay, vesicle membrane associated transporter. Then we have the norepinephrine will be synthesized inside the vesicles. Again, the same process I said before: vesicle associated membrane protein and synaptosomal membrane associated protein will be fused with each other, the same. But here what you have to know is the inhibitor is the pretileum and the guanthidine. It's not the botulinum toxin. And for the go to the adrenoreceptors, by the way. So for the tyrosine metyrosine will inhibit the tyrosine hydroxylase. Reserpine will inhibit the vesicle membrane associated protein. In the adrenergic transmission, the visamicol will inhibit the vesicular acetylcholine transporter. So one more thing here is the norepinephrine transporter will be inhibited by cocaine and tricyclic antidepressant. I'm gonna talk about that in the antidepressant lecture, okay? So guys, the next point is the major autonomic receptor types. So the cholinereceptors, we have M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5, and nicotinic, NN, and NM. Okay. In case of the adrenoreceptors, which is related to the sympathetic, alpha 1, 2, beta 1, 2, and 3. I'm not gonna cover the dopamine receptors in the future lectures. I'm gonna explain it. But right now, let's focus on the cholinereceptors and the adrenoreceptors. For the M1, look, M1, M3, and M5 have the same mechanism of actions: formation of formation of inositol phosphate 3 and diacetylglycerol. Okay, so and increase intracellular calcium. Okay, so we can find M1 in the CNS neurons, sympathetic postganglionic neurons, and some presynaptic sites. Okay guys, I know it's really difficult to memorize that right now, but in the future lectures about when we talk about the adrenergic and cholinergic drugs, you will be able to understand every single receptor and the sites of the receptor. Okay, receptors. In case of the M2 and M4 have the same mechanism of action, which is inhibition of adenylate cyclase, so the cyclic AMP will be decreased, and opening of the potassium channel. We can find M2 in the myocardium, smooth muscle, some presynaptic sites and CNS neurons. M3, which is the major receptor for for the parasympathetic nervous system, you can find it everywhere. Okay, so exocrine gland vessels, CNS neurons. In M4 and M5, it's not really that important, but what you have to know about the M5 is the vascular endothelium, especially cerebral vessels. Okay. In case of the nicotinic, I don't really want to explain everything in details right now, but what you have to know that in case of the N, we have alpha and beta type subunits. Okay, but in case of the NM, we have alpha, beta, delta, and gamma. And don't worry, I'm gonna explain everything in the future lectures. Okay, by the way, it is because it is depolarization process, so we have opening of the sodium and potassium channels. Depolarization, everyone knows that to get depolarized we have to open the sodium and potassium channels, so the sodium will get inside the cell and the potassium will get outside. Okay, but in case of repolarization, the pump, sodium potassium pump, will be activated, so the three sodiums will get outside, and two potassium into the cell. Okay, in case of the adrenoreceptor, we have alpha. Alpha, we can find it in post effector cells, especially smooth muscles. We know alpha 1 is the major vasoconstrictive in our human body, alpha receptor. Okay, but don't worry, in the next table you will understand everything. Again, it is formation of inositol phosphate 3 and diacylglycerol, increase intracellular calcium. In case of the alpha 2, presynaptic adrenergic nerve terminals, platelets, leukocytes, and smooth muscles. To be honest, I want to cover everything. I know now it's really difficult to understand what I'm saying, but because in the next table you will understand what I mean. In case of the beta, you can find it in postsynaptic effector cells, especially heart, leukocytes, brain. Leukocytes is really important, and juxtaglomerular apparatus of the renal tubules and ciliary body epithelium. Beta 2 postsynaptic effector cells, especially smooth muscle. Look, smooth muscle, you will understand why, and cardiac muscle. Beta 3 postsynaptic effector cells and lipocytes. Lipocytes here are lipocytes. You have to focus on this point. By the way, I forgot to say something. That is in case of the alpha 2, we have the platelets. Okay, it's really important, this point. That's for this table. That's everything here you have to know. For the next table, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic activities. First, we have the eye, the iris radial muscle, iris circular muscle, and the ciliary muscle. First, the iris radial muscle will be contracted by the sympathetic alpha 1 receptors. It's really important to understand, as I explained before, the sympathetic is ergotropic system, or let's say fly and fight. Okay, you are running, so you will need to absorb as much as you can. You need to absorb light as much as you can to see what is around you, what is going on, because you are running, you are scared, I don't know what is going on, so that you need to absorb, or in response to low light, so you have to contract the iris radial muscle to dilate the pupil, so that you can get more light into the eye, or absorb more light into the eye. But in case of the iris and that's called mydriasis. But in case of the iris circular muscle, the parasympathetic activity the parasympathetic M3 receptors will contract the iris circular muscle, and that will induce meiosis. Okay, meiosis, so the opposite effect. Okay, but in case of the ciliary muscle, it's really important to understand something is called accommodation. Let's go to the whiteboard for a moment. So guys, let me briefly explain the accommodation. It's physiologic part, but as you can see here, we have the ciliary muscle, the lens, and that's all you need to know here. So the ciliary, in case of the sympathetic activity, the ciliary muscle will be relaxed. Okay, so that means you can see what is far, let's say for far vision. Because let's say that you are running, you need to decide, go right, go left, jump, whatever you wanna do, okay, or whatever you're gonna do. So that in case of the sympathetic activity, as I said, fly and fight, you need to decide. So that you need to see, you need far vision, you don't need near vision, okay. But in case, so that as you can see, the lens will be flattened more. But in case of the parasympathetic, the ciliary muscle, as you can see, the ciliary muscle contracted, and it's like a ball. So that means you can for near vision. Okay, let's say, guys, I know it's not that amazing example, but for example, you are reading a book, right? And you need to focus more for near vision to read well. It's related to the wrist. I know it's not that. It's not really important to know that, but you are reading, for example, something, and you need to focus more. You need to focus on the words and to read well and to understand everything. You are just you won't have a rest. I'm just sitting and I want to have a good night or just read a book. So that the parasympathetic, as I said before, rest and digest. So the ciliary muscle will be contracted and to focus on near vision, not on the far vision. That's for, so that in case of the parasympathetic we have accommodation, the accommodation process, but in case of the sympathetic it's loss of accommodation. So the next part is the heart. The heart, as I said before, guys, I don't want to say that every time, but the sympathetic, it is ergotropic, flight and fight. So that you will need to increase your heart rate, the blood flow. What? Because you are running, you need more blood, you need, the energy metabolism will be increased and everything. So as you can see here, the by the way, by the beta 1, beta 2, and so the sinoatrial, the ectopic pacemaker accelerates by beta 1, beta 2. But in case of the parasympathetic, let's say about the contractility too, the contractility will be increased for sure, because you need more blood flow to your vital organs. But in case of the parasympathetic, as I said before, it is trophotropic, just a rest. So you don't need that much of the blood, you don't need the fast, or let's say fast heart rate, so it decelerates. But in case of the guys, for contractility, there is no, or let's say we have few parasympathetic fibers, so decreases mostly for atria, because there is no, let's say there is no, but there are, but not that much. There is no parasympathetic fibers in the ventricle part, so that it's written here, decrease atria. By the way, by M2, because if you remember, guys, I said the M2 receptors for myocardium, we can find it in the myocardium. For the next part, we have the blood vessels. The blood vessels, to be honest, are really complicated to understand everything here, or let's say to memorize everything. For example, in case, guys, of the skin and splanchnic vessels, okay, will be contracted by the alpha, okay, because you are running, okay, you need to contract your skin vessels, okay. But in case of the skeletal muscles, it is related to the thermoregulation process for the skin and for the skin. But in case of the skeletal muscle vessels, it will be relaxed, guys, because you need more blood to your muscles. You are running, you need more blood, you need more oxygen, so that the skeletal muscle vessels will be relaxed and to let's say to have more blood in your muscles, okay. By the way, in case, that's the hallmark here. So that I told you it's kind of complicated, but not that much. In case of the skeletal muscles, the alpha the alpha receptor will contract the skeletal muscle vessels. There is no related for the parasympathetic here. But one more thing is the relaxes by AMI3 receptors, and these points here, I'm gonna cover these points with more details in the adrenergic in the adrenergic drugs, not here, because it will take more time. In case of the guys bronchial smooth muscles, it will be relaxed, so that you need more oxygen for sure, guys. And here it will be contract, and because you are just doing nothing, you are just sitting in the chair and reading a book, so you don't need really high respiration rate. In case of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so guys, let's in the smooth muscle, the wall of this intestine or the small stomach will be relaxed in case of the sympathetic nervous system by alpha 2 and beta 2. And guys, you have to understand that too. What is the point here? That you are running again, okay? You want just to save your life, so that you're running, and you don't need to contract your small intestine muscles, because you don't need to defecate, okay? You are just running, you are in stress, you want to escape or whatever is going on, so that it will be relaxed to focus more on your life, not on the defecation process. But in case, for example, in the parasympathetic by the AMI3, as I said, you can see AMI3 here, too much, or so many AMI3 there, because I told you AMI3 is the major receptor for the parasympathetic. You can find it mostly everywhere, so that it will be contracts here, and that will induce, in case, for example, if we have overactivity of the parasympathetic, that will induce diarrhea, but here it will induce constipation. And that's really logical. But in case of the sphincter, guys, sphincters are, as you can see, you have to understand this part, that the sphincters will be contracted in the sympathetic, because the sphincters, let's for example, we have here the anal, okay, and we have the anal sphincter, okay, because already you relax the wall. That's really good. There is no contraction, so the feces will not go through the anal to the anal canal, or let's say the anal forum, and the anal sphincters will be contracted. That means the feces will not get out. Okay, you have to understand this part, because it's related to each other. It's not different. Like, I'm not saying that, for example, the walls and the sphincters, both of them will be relaxed in the sympathetic. No, the walls will be relaxed and the sphincters will be contracted, and the opposite process for the parasympathetic. For the secretion, guys, again, it's really logical to understand the secretion. You're not doing some digestion process, okay? So that the secretion process will be decreased, and in case of the parasympathetic will be increased. The genitourinary, the same concept here, so I don't think that I have to talk about it more again. In case of the penis and seminal vesicles, so here for ejaculation and here for erection, guys, because the parasympathetic cause some, let's say, vasodilation, so the blood flow will increase to the penis, and we have the erection process will happen. But in case here we have the ejaculation for the sympathetic. The pilomotor smooth muscle, guys, goosebump, that when you're the skin and the hair on your skin will be straight, like, because it will be contracted by the pilomotor smooth muscle and the skin in the skin, which is called goosebump. Guys, when you are excited and you are doing something, or you're watching movie, action, whatever it is, so you'll be excited, and you can notice that the hair on your skin will be like such a weird. In case of the sweaty glands, as I said before, for example, this part I'm not gonna talk about right now, because later I'm gonna cover it. For guys, the metabolic functions, it's really understandable here that, for example, the gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, lipolysis, it is for metabolism. That means you need more energy, so the glucose level will be increased, the glycogen level will be decreased, the lipolysis, you need more energy, so that The lipolysis, guys, you remember from the previous table I said beta 3 for lipolysis. So don't worry, everything will be okay. I'm gonna cover everything in the adrenergic drugs with more details, but now you have to understand this part. For the kidney, the renal release, as you remember from the previous figure, as I said, the beta 1, you can find it in the juxtaglomerular apparatus, right? And it's for renal release. That's the hallmark for the sympathetic and the parasympathetic activities. It's not everything, okay? There are so many details about it. Okay, but when I'm gonna talk about the sympathetic, or let's say the adrenergic and cholinergic drugs, you will be able to understand everything. So hopefully you understand here everything, and thanks for watching and goodbye.